Hi, Im Suyang La Intim Jun Kaba. I hope both of you are doing well, and I would like to welcome you to our video lecture on the topic directing. And here under directing, we will be covering the meaning, the definition, characteristics, importance, and principles of directing. Let us look at the meaning of directing. What do you understand by the word directing? Let me just give you an example. Take for example the director of a movie. What does he or she do? What about a choir director, or say the traffic police? The job of all these people is to guide or to lead or to instruct people. So this is what is meant by directing. Now, like we always do, let us understand this by chalking out some key points very briefly. First one is directing is a function of management. The second one is directing is related with human factor. That is, directing is guiding, leading, instructing, inspiring people. And directing initiates organized action, which means it is never conducted randomly, it is always organized. And directing begins after planning, organizing, and staffing. And in directing, a superior manager directs his or her subordinates and not the vice versa. And directing has three elements: motivation, that we will discuss it in a separate lecture, and leadership, you have already done it in your assignment, and communication, which we will discuss in the next slide. We will look into two definitions of directing or direction. The first definition is given by G.R. Terry. He says, directing means moving to action and supplying simulative power to a group of persons. Here, G.R. Terry is talking about the delegation of authority. What G.R. Terry is pointing to in this definition is the delegation of authority, that is giving the subordinate this power to complete certain tasks with clear, proper guidance and instruction. And the second definition is given by Kunz and O'Donnell. They say, directing is the interpersonal aspect of managing by which subordinates are led to understand and contribute effectively and efficiently to the attainment of enterprise objectives. Here we see that directing is carried out to obtain certain objectives. And I mentioned earlier that we will talk about communication in this slide. This definition is what I'm talking about. When we talk about interpersonal aspect, we are also talking about good communication between subordinates, good communication between superior and subordinates. Remember, directing is performed to bridge this communication gap. Now, let us learn about the characteristics of directing. Direction is a continuous activity. This means that a manager has to lead, guide, instruct, and inspire the employees and also motivate them on a continuous basis. Performed at every level of management, this means that every level of management has superior subordinate position. Each manager at every level acts simultaneously both as a superior and a subordinate. For example, the principal of an educational institution is a subordinate of the director of technical education. And on the other hand, the principal is also a superior of the institution that he is running. And directing is related with human factor, which means directing is meant for personals, that is, people. Directing is an executive function. This means that directing is not just in paper, it is to be executed at all levels. Direction has dual objectives. What does this mean? On one hand, directing aims to instruct the subordinates. On the other hand, it also provides the superiors to handle those tasks which are difficult for the subordinates. As directing involves leadership, you have to lead by example. Direction is a creative activity. Now, without creativity in directing, subordinates can become inactive and demotivated. Therefore, the superior needs to bring in creativity in methods of instructing and motivating the employees. These are the characteristics of directing. In this slide, we will talk about the importance of directing. The first one is direction initiates action. Directing is a phase where action is required all the time. We have seen that it is an executive function. Without this phase, all the planning, organizing that we have performed under management will be ineffective. And the second one is direction integrates employees' actions. Here, giving proper directions not only makes an employee effective but also efficient. It also builds good interpersonal relationships. This is how direction integrates employees' actions. The third one is direction facilitates changes in organization. We have seen that directing requires creativity. It also motivates employees to adapt to changes. This helps organization to incorporate any changes in the society that can affect the organization. The fourth one is direction provides stability and balance in the organization. Here, good leadership, employee motivation, interpersonal aspects can provide stability and balance in the organization. And all these elements comes under directing. Let us look into the principles of directing. There are two categories here under principles. The first one is related to the purpose, principles relating to the purpose of directing. And the second one is related to the process, principles relating to direction process. Firstly, let us talk about the purpose here. Here under the purpose, the basic purpose of directing is to obtain organizational objectives. And in order to obtain that, we will see what are the principles that need to be followed. The first one is principles of maximum individual contribution. Here, this principle states that management should adopt techniques or methods which allows individual to contribute in the organization. Individuals are not just passive workers there, but they will also be actively contributing in the organization. B. Principle of harmony of objectives. In this principle, it talks about the harmonious integration of organizational objectives as well as individual objectives. But this principle also says that in the long run, organizational objectives should always prevail before individual objectives. C. Principle of efficiency of direction. In order to provide satisfaction to employees, it is important to develop correct direction techniques and effective communication system. Now, let us talk about the second part, that is principles relating to direction process. And this process is to do with making a direction technique effective and efficient. The first one is principle of unity of command. We have already discussed about this time and again, and I will not elaborate much on this. This simply means that an employee should receive instructions from one superior only. B. Principle of appropriateness of direction technique. By the word appropriateness itself, it is quite easy for us to understand that the right or the appropriate direction technique should be used in every situation. Flexibility is the element here. C. Principles of managerial communication. This principle states the importance, the importance of effective communication. The success of every organization will depend upon good communication between superior and subordinates. D. Principle of comprehension. Here, comprehension means clarity of instructions, The employees should be conveyed unambiguous and clear instructions. E. Principle of use of informal organization. We know that people develop relationships in organizations other than official or formal relationships. That is, they also develop informal relationships. These informal relationships should not be ignored in an organization. And informal relationships are better equipped to provide effective communication. F, principle of leadership. Here it says that managers should become leaders. They should be able to influence employees and set themselves as role models. The last principle, that is principle of follow-through. What does it mean? This principle says that managers are not there just to give orders. They should also be responsible for assessing the employees, whether the employees are working accordingly, or what sort of problems they are facing, and how can the superior or the manager help them in order to overcome those shortcomings. These are the principles. I hope you have understood it clearly. Now, we have already covered all the details under directing in this lecture. Under this directing, you need to do a very simple assignment, that is, write the meaning, concept and definition of directing. Write a proper note, make a very proper note, 2 to 3 pages, and send it before 22nd of May. Thank you very much for your patience listening, and you are very much welcome to put your queries if you have any doubts. And I hope you take good care.